Hey, this is the Pizza here, and this is a solo run of Wolf's Den. Before I tried to solo Cave of Fire, and made it all the way to the end of the dungeon, but wasn't able to defeat the boss. So this time I was determined to get to the end and kill the boss. So I had some Herograms, which gave me 230,000 extra health, and about 60,000 extra mana. So I did this solo during the 1.5 drop rate event, so I get drops more often than you would normally get them. Wolf's Den is supposedly the most difficult of all the level 19 dungeons, but I find that's also the most entertaining. The whole run, including the boss, took me about 1 hour, and I also went through this little side path that is coming up shortly. So there's a lot of big rooms in Wolf's Den, and it helps to pull up the map a few times to see which way you need to exit, and then on your mini-map, enable the monster locations to find out the least populated way to get through. And also be aware of patrolling groups that could get involved with the fight that you're already in and cause some problems. Along with my Herograms, I also brought a bountiful supply of potions, so in case my Herograms were recharging, but I still need some health, or I didn't want my Herograms to burn out, I could use the potions. So the thing that I found the most annoying about this dungeon was the archers, which for most classes wouldn't be a problem, but for a melee class like the Werebeast, it can get really annoying, because when you attack them, they run away. And when they run away, they can run into groups of enemies. And your only options are to either follow them into the group of enemies and get into a bigger battle, or try to back off and pull them away. But if you try to back off and pull them away, you could be losing a lot of health. So the archers did drag me into some groups of enemies occasionally. I found that the best skills to use against archers were damage over time skills, because as the archers ran away, they would still be taking damage even though you weren't attacking them directly. So right now I'm about halfway through the dungeon. There aren't really any particularly tricky rooms in the dungeon. Some of them have large groups of monsters, but more often than not you can avoid them. The best way to avoid monsters is usually to stick very close to the outside edges of a room. That strategy could save you a lot of trouble. So right now I'm going along the side path, and sometimes at the end of side paths there are mini bosses. So I was curious and I went along. But when I got to the room at the end of the path, there were circling archers and a group of 5 enemies. So no mini-bosses, which I was a little disappointed about, but I decided to clear out the room anyway. So I took out the circling archers first, and then went after the group. And the group actually isn't one full group, I discovered. It's 2 or 3 groups, and as far as I could tell, those groups didn't drop any special items. So now I'm back on the main path, and I use the outside method to go through this large room. Sometimes when I use the method of going along the outside, I would occasionally get snagged by a group anyway. So what I did was I tried to pull them as far away from an area where I could get into some trouble with other groups as possible, and then fight them. So I'm nearing the boss. The boss for this dungeon is Dehisen Sky, and I was looking forward to defeating him because of the drop rate event. So I was looking forward to getting a few good drops from him and possibly a molder. Before I went into this dungeon, my inventory was almost empty, and about at this point it became too full to hold any of the items I picked up. So I ended up having to drink a lot of potions just to clear up my inventory and drop a few things that I could substitute for something better. So when you go into a dungeon, try to put things in the bank or sell things at the auction house or something like that. So I'm now at the entrance to the boss's chamber, and there is no way to go around the outside and avoid that group at the front. There's also a patrolling archer who happened to catch on to me right there. And there's two groups of wolven guards right before the boss's chamber. And when you get in, there are 5 or 6 circling wolves and a few spiders. And some of the wolves and spiders are in groups. So the first thing you do in the boss's chamber is take out all the circling groups, as you can see I'm doing right now. And since I was soloing this, no one had the tablet to activate, so I didn't get any extra experience for killing this boss. And the groups dropped a few Dragon Quest items, and so did the boss. So this 1.5 drop rate event helped me get a lot more than I normally get. So now down to the last few circling groups. Some of the spiders in this cave have poison attacks. They also sometimes run away like the archers. So now I'm fighting the boss, and I took out his little minions first, who are the exact same creatures that you fought through the dungeon. And then I start taking on the boss. And it was a really good thing that I had a Herogram, or else I would have been dead, even if I'd used up all my potions. He dealt somewhere around 150-160 damage for every hit, and he attacks on an average rate, I'd say. So when you have about 4,600 health, you get killed in about maybe 30 hits. When I started this dungeon, the health Herogram I had about 230,000 health, and at the end of this dungeon it had about 200,000. So I lost a considerable amount of that Herogram, and I also lost about maybe 10-20,000 of my mana Herogram, because I used a lot of skills on this boss. And the boss battle alone took roughly 5 minutes. So the purple drops that I got from this boss are posted on my blog at pwthepizza.blogspot.com. So, Destined Sky doesn't have any area of effect attacks, which means that even the low-level people in your party can get in and kill him, as long as they make sure not to grab his attention. And so you can see I'm using a lot of skills. I used Poison Fang, which adds an extra amount of damage, wood elemental damage, to the attacks. And even if an enemy isn't weak to it, it's still good because no matter what, it'll give you some amount of extra damage, which makes it that much easier. So I forgot to rebuff myself before the battle, so I was worried about my Beast King Reanimate running out. So it's a good idea to rebuff before a big battle, in case you think your buffs might run out sometime soon. So now he is almost dead, and as you'll see in a moment, when I killed him, I got quite a few drops. I got 2 purples, and a couple of blues. I also got a couple of Dragon Quest items, and a couple of white equipment items, and I also got gold. So it was a pretty good drop for me. So when he finally died and I saw what he dropped, I was very pleased. Kind of disappointed about the no molder, but I wasn't really expecting one because of such a little chance of getting it. So that's the end of my solo run of Wolf's Den. Thanks for watching.